I'd like to welcome everybody to the Wednesday, February 2nd, 2011 Reno City Planning Commission meeting. I'd like to ask everybody to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you and welcome. Robert, may we have roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Kevin Weisky.
Present.
Jason Mosley.
Present.
Max Haltom.
Present.
Doug Kaufman.
Here.
Patrick Egan.
Present.
Jim Newberg. Here. Dennis Romeo. Here. We do have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, item number 3, approval of minutes of the January 5th, 2011 Planning Commission meeting.
Move to approve, Commissioner.
Commissioner Kaufman, the first. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Egan. Before we go to a vote, I have some minor corrections that I've turned over to Robert. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to amend, make comment of? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries unanimously. City Council Liaison Report. No, not this evening. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is item number 5, public comment. Public comment is limited to no more than 3 minutes on items that do not appear on the agenda and/or items for which no public comment period was afforded. The public may comment upon agenda items by submitting a request to speak form to our clerk, Robert, to my right, at the time of the meeting. Robert, do we have any requests to speak?
No, sir, we do not.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who has not filled out a form who wishes to speak on an agenda item, on any item that is not on our agenda? Okay. At this time, I would like to welcome a group of Boy Scouts that we have over here to our right from Troop 445. These young men are working on their, if you'd like to stand up, boys, they are standing on, or working on their citizenship in this community badge. It is a requirement for their Eagle Scout. So, welcome. Thank you for coming tonight. With that, I will close public comment. Next on our agenda is item number 6, time extension. Project LDC 04-00291. Will the applicant or representative for the applicant please come forward to the podium and present their project?
Hi, my name is Craig Knutson with Tanamera, and we are just requesting an extension of the existing tentative map for Wild Stallion per the NRS. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Staff.
Claudia Hansen, Planning Manager.
Yes.
Staff can support this request for time extension. We're
Thank
available
you.
for questions.
At this time, I will open up public comment for this time extension. Robert, do we have any requests to speak forms on this item?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay. Is there anyone here in the audience who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Hearing and seeing none, I close public comment, bring it back to the commission for questions and/or motion. Commissioner Newberg,
Motion, please.
please go ahead.
I move to approve a 1-year time extension for Wild Stallion Estates 5, allowing all remaining maps to be recorded by March 21st, 2012, or the map will expire subject to the existing conditions contained in the city clerk's letter dated May 12, 2004. I can make the findings.
This is Commissioner Romeo. I will second that motion. I also can make the findings.
Thank you, commissioners. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next on our agenda is item number 7, unfinished business, public hearings. All let's just go ahead and call these up, but I have been notified on all three unfinished business items that the applicants have requested continuations. So I will open them up individually and we will go through this process. Will the applicant's representative please come forward on item number 1, LDC 10-00051, Bella Vista Ranch, Phase 2.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Randy Walter with Places Consulting. I'm here representing Corona Cyan LLC. We're requesting a continuance next month. We're still trying to work things out with the fire department on their exactions that they're working with us on.
Thank you, Randy. If you would please stay close to the front. Before I ask for a motion from the commissioners, I do have a request to speak under public comment form. So at this time, I will open public comment on this agenda item. Kim Rodemeyer, you will have 3 minutes, please.
I'll just go ahead and come back.
Could you
at
please
the
introduce yourself?
Pardon me, Kim Rodemeyer for the record. I'll just come back at the next meeting or when it's scheduled again.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak under this agenda item who does not want to come back next month? Hearing and seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for a motion for continuation. Commissioner Romeo?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When is our next meeting, and has the applicant waived time on this? Are we,
The next
Staff?
meeting would be March 2nd, and they have waive time, but I would recommend that he step up to the microphone and put
I
that on
would
the
like
record
that
again.
stated for the record.
Yes, we waive our time requirement on that.
Thank you.
That was Randy speaking.
Sorry, Randy Walter.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, the case of LDC 10-00051, Bella Vista Ranch Phase 2, I move to continue this item to the March 2nd, 2011 meeting.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second from Commissioner Newberg. Do we have any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. See you next month, Randy. Thank you. Next on our agenda, item number 2, LDC 11-00023, Royal Liquor and Smoke. Is the applicant's representative here or the applicant this evening?
Claudia Hanson, Planning Manager, they were not able to come tonight, and, I'm sorry, you
Do
did come.
have
I
the
was-
owner here.
All right, very good. I was told they were not going to be here tonight.
Okay. If you would please introduce yourself.
Mandy Palsa, the owner.
Okay. And you would like a continuation? Is
Yes,
that
we
correct?
needed to attend the neighborhood advisory board meeting next month.
Okay.
I mean this month, and we would like to work things out with neighbors, so we just need a little bit more time.
Okay. Very good. So you would like to be put on the March 2nd agenda?
Yes,
Okay. And you waive time on that?
yes.
Okay. Very good. At this time, I will open public comment on this agenda item. Robert, do we have any requests to speak forums?
No, sir, I don't, but could I ask the owner to fill me out a card so I get her name
Yes.
properly, please? Thank you.
Thank you. She heard you. She will do that for you. Okay. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under the Royal Liquor and Smoke agenda item? Okay. I will close public comment at this time and ask for a motion from commissioners for a continuation to our March 2nd meeting. Commissioner Romeo.
Mr. Chairman, I move to continue this item, LDC 11-00023, to the March 2nd, 2011 meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Newberg has a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? Very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We will see you next month. Item number 3 is LDC 11-00027 Ranchera PUD. If the applicant's representative will please come forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, for the record, Andy Durling with Wood Rogers representing Ranchera. We do request continuance. We've been meeting with some of the adjacent property owners, took them on a site tour, working through some changes to the overall program, and feel like a couple more weeks would be beneficial to everyone, and we'll plan on being back in front of you March 2nd. We'll waive our time.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, I will open public comment. Is there anyone, Robert, do we have any requests to speak forms?
No, sir, we do not.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on this agenda item that has not filled out a request to speak for? Hearing and seeing none, I will close public comment and ask commissioners for a motion for continuance. Commissioner Woosley.
Yes, in the case of LDC 11-00027, Ranchera PUD amendment, I recommend that we continue this to the March 2nd agenda.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Kaufman, I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? No? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That will take care of unfinished business. Next on our agenda is item number 8, public hearings. Under public hearings, I'd like to make an announcement for anybody that might be here for item number 3, which is LDC 11-00028 Del Taco Northtown Lane. That has been postponed. It will be renoticed and re-agendized at a later date. So if you are here for that, that has been postponed and will be heard at a later date. First up is item number 1, LDC 11-00033, Arrow Creek Town Center. If the applicant's representative will please come forward before we get started and have you introduce yourself.
Of course.
Commissioners, do you have anybody who needs to recuse themselves or make any comments?
Mr. Chairman, it's come to my attention that the one of the applicant's agents representing them on this is a client of mine in a real estate transaction. So I'd like to recuse myself from this particular topic.
Thank you for making that disclosure at this time.
Okay. Any other disclosures? None? Okay. The applicant's representative, please introduce herself to us.
Of course.
You have 15 minutes.
I won't need 15 minutes. Members of the commission, good evening. I am Britta Trigby with CFA representing the applicant, and Rob Dunbar is with me tonight. He is the applicant. He's with Ryder Homes, and our request is for an extension of time on Arrow Creek Town Center, and we are in concurrence with the staff report, and I'll just leave it at that.
Britta, thank you. Staff?
Once
Claudia?
again, Claudia Hansen, Planning Manager. This is a request. It's not your typical time extension. It is an amendment to the condition, which would give it an additional 5 years. So just to clarify that for the record, and staff can support the request.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. At this time, I will open public comment. Robert, do we have any requests to speak forums on this agenda item?
No, sir, we do not.
Thank you. Is there anyone here in the audience this evening who wishes to speak on this agenda item who has not filled out a request to speak forum? Hearing and seeing none, I will close public comment, bring it back to the commission for motion or discussion. Commissioner Newberg.
Thank you, Commissioner Chair. Proposed motion based upon compliance with the applicable special use permit findings. I move to approve the amendment to condition 2, subject to the conditions listed by the City Reno Planning Commission. Decision letter dated April 3rd, 2008 for case number LDC 08001939, Arrow Creek Town Center, and as amended, subject to the above modifications, in additions to any modifications and additions adopted by the Planning Commission or upon appeal. I can make the findings.
Thank you, Commissioner Newberg. Commissioner Romeo.
I will second, and I also can make findings.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Halton, would you please rejoin us? Next on our agenda is item number 2, LDC 11-00022, Lutheran Church of Good Shepherd. Will the applicant's representative please come forward?
Chair Weisky.
And before you start, I'm going to ask my commissioners if they have any disclosures.
Commissioner Egan, I'd like to recuse myself based on the fact that myself and my wife live approximately 200 feet from the site. And based upon these facts, legal agrees with the recusal based on that interest.
Thank you very much. Any other disclosures?
Mr.
Very
Chairman.
good. Pat, you need to step off. I'll call you when this one's done.
Mr. Chairman, it's Commissioner Romeo.
Commissioner Romeo.
I have received an email and one phone call on this issue.
Thank you. Any other disclosures? Okay, very good. At this time then, the applicant's representative, you have 15 minutes. If you would start by introducing yourself, please.
I'm Pastor Carl Wilfred of Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd, and behind me tonight are several members of the congregation, some of whom may want to borrow the clock next Sunday morning. Please permit me a couple of minutes to introduce to you our congregation. Good Shepherd was founded in 1947, and after meeting in temporary quarters, the Masonic Hall downtown, for almost 5 years, built our current worship space upstairs and gathering space downstairs in the basement at the corner of California Avenue and Clay Street in 1952. In its first 25 years of life, the congregation experienced dramatic growth and dramatic decline, but since then has enjoyed steady growth, pretty much paralleling that of Reno Sparks. We are currently one of the leading congregations in the Sierra Pacific Synod, Northern California, Northern Nevada, of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the largest Lutheran body in the United States. We are now the largest or second largest Lutheran congregation in Reno Sparks. While most of our members live in the 89509 zip code, we draw people from all over the Truckee Meadows. What's the draw? We offer a wide range of programs. Different folks would have different ideas about our strengths, but I will mention 3 that I think our church does well: faith formation, worship and music, and service to the community, especially the most needy and the least attractive. Faith formation used to be called Christian education, but the goal is not to fill heads with knowledge, but to form faith in children, youth, and adults. We spend a lot of our resources trying to do that well. Worship and music. Some of our longtime members and current key musicians have names like Maytan and Lenz and Gaunt, which are names synonymous with excellent music in Reno. We offer a variety of worship styles and music. Service to the community. Good Shepherd has long understood that the congregation lives not for itself, but for others. For over 25 years, we have shared our space with several 12-step groups, mostly Alcoholics Anonymous groups, meeting in the early mornings or late afternoons for people, primarily for people who live or work in downtown Reno. We have partnered with St. Thomas Aquinas Roman Catholic Church in their Friars Food Pantry, and with several other Lutheran churches in a food distribution ministry called Shared Harvest. We are a founding member of Family Promise, Interfaith Hospitality Network of Reno Sparks, that provides shelter, food, and other support for eligible homeless families with children. In 1991, we formed Silver Sage Manor, a nonprofit whose mission is to provide housing for low-income seniors. One project now stands on South McCarran Boulevard, and another will soon open on Neal Road. The proposed project that we present to you tonight will offer more space and flexibility for our worship and music ministry, and will expand the fellowship space available for welcoming people to worship and gathering after worship and at other times. These spaces will provide opportunities for relationships with God and each other to grow, and it is from these relationships that we draw the strength for all our other work, both within and outside the congregation. In 2007, this commission granted us the special use permit and the variances that we needed, but due to circumstances beyond our control, we could not move forward at that time. During the intervening time, the congregation reaffirmed its strong desire to remain at our location in downtown Reno, participate in the downtown Renaissance, and continue to serve our neighbors here. Members have contributed and pledged almost $2 million to this project, and we are pleased to present to you tonight a revised plan that will bring some needed work to the local construction industry at this difficult time. And now I will ask our architect, Tim Mathias, to present the particulars of our plan.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Tim Mathias. I'm the architect that's been working with the congregation since 1994, actually, to make this project a reality, and we're excited to be here. Oops, let's see.
Just
here.
use the arrows on the keyboard.
Oh. Nope.
Robert, would you mind dimming the lights a little bit, please?
There we go.
Thank you.
As Pastor Carl mentioned, this project was brought before the Planning Commission at a previous time, and it was a much larger project. It was over 20,000 square feet of addition in 2 phases. The first phase was the worship, and then there was an addition for additional fellowship rooms and meeting rooms and administration space. As Pastor Carl mentioned, that SGP expired in February of 2010, and it was right about the time the church was launching, actually getting its footing on board financially, and we had to reassess our application and then reapply for this special use permit, which is looking for approval of phase 1 only, which is 4,591 or 61 square feet. To orient us a little bit, we have the green square in the center is the site. I can't, or I can do this for the audience, but I can't do it for you folks. It's at the corner of Arlington and California. A little closer in view shows the Newlands neighborhood right adjacent to the downtown. In terms of the land use planning, this is a site, which is a public facilities zone, is right in the middle of what's called the transition area of the Newlands neighborhood, and is right across the street from the downtown district. So it's surrounded by neighborhood commercial and professional office and multifamily and single family kind of kitty corner to the northwest. So that is the overall site context. The proposed plan has the addition, which is shown in a gray shading. There are 2 existing buildings on the site. This is the existing worship facility, and this is an existing 1-story administration and meeting room facility. There is a parking for 15 spaces between the parking lot at the back and 2 spaces along the alley. There's alley access in this direction, and we are creating a new enclosure for garbage, as well as a transformer on the back portion of the property to clean up and hide that trash enclosure. We have handicap accessibility to the proposed addition, both on actually on 3 sides at the moment. The major entrance is off of Clay Street, and I'll show you a floor plan here in a few seconds. Clay Street into the building, and then landscaping around the perimeter. The proposed landscape plan is shown here. The proposed addition on the corner, landscaping around the perimeter with new street trees within the street median on Clay Street. And then as part of our discussions with the neighbors and with the planning staff, the neighborhood strongly wanted to have the new parkway put in on California Street, which is a continuation of the parkway kind of pattern that is further to the west. And so we have added, the church has agreed to add that into the overall plan. This is the floor plan to give you an idea of kind of how this lays out. The existing facility is here, And the new addition then attaches to that with a new entry welcome center off of Clay Street, connects to a hallway that goes to what was the former church sanctuary space, and then the new gathering space is a large rectangular form on the corner. The architecture of the building is designed to do several things. First of all, to blend in and complement the existing one-story brick existing sanctuary building, as well as the brick buildings in the neighborhood that are surrounding this property. So the addition has a sloping roof that goes up to a clear-story window, which faces the east or Clay Street here, and it slopes back down to the scale of the existing building. There is a cross tower on the corner here, and then on Clay Street we have stained glass windows along the Clay Street facade that lead us to the entry portico over off of Clay Street. The architecture in terms of materials, we're using the brick along the base to tie into the brick of the existing building. And then on the tower elements, we're using a lighter material, a plaster, a painted plaster, kind of a taupe or a warm gray color. And then the roofing is a standing seam architectural metal in a kind of a patinaed zinc is what we're looking at. This is a view from the corner of Arlington and California, and it shows what the sanctuary will look like. This is the existing building on the corner and the new entrance off of Clay Street and the clear-story windows with the cross tower on the corner. In terms of parking, there are two variances that are part of this request, and the first is to continue basically the pattern of parking that the church has historically used on this property, which is to have joint use reciprocal agreements with surrounding properties to make up for the balance of their parking need. Staff has determined that there are 17 off-site reciprocal parking spaces required based on the 90 spaces that are 90 seats that we are increasing seating for the space. And so the church has in place 15 parking spaces on site, which we've talked about already. And then there are 39 reciprocal parking agreements within walking distance right across the street at the Wells Fargo. And then the 3 lots, one adjacent the property, and then 2 a little further down off of California. So there's a total of 54 parking spaces for Sunday worship seating, which will meet the 17 required spaces. Signage is another variance request. We have on this site, it's kind of a little unusual for such a small site. There are actually 3 presentation frontages. There's one off of Clay, there's one off of California, and there's kind of the kitty corner one from the intersection of Arlington and California. And so what we're proposing on these 2 sides, on California Street, are 8-inch cast aluminum letters that say Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd, kind of right along here. You can't see it, it's not as easy to see back here, but they're right along this area. A little more clear here in the front. And then on Clay Street, doing the same thing, 8-inch letters which say Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd over the entrance. Fairly clean and discreet signage. That is the variance request. The other request is to relocate the existing non-conforming monument sign, and make it, we're actually replacing it and making it smaller than it is now. And that would be located directly on the corner and viewable from the intersection of Arlington and California. And it would look like this. It would have, the sign component would be this is about 7 feet long and 2 feet tall. It would have white letters or aluminum letters on a black background, and then the housing would be an aluminum, a brushed aluminum component to tie in with the aluminum letters on the walls of the building. There would be a space, kind of a reader board for replacing letters down below to announce service times and messages down below that area. To give you an idea of how large this is, when we were at the NAB, they were concerned that this thing was really large because it's large on the screen. But actually, this is this blue line is the finished floor or foundation height of where this would be on the building. And to give you an idea of what that would look like, it's here on the corner. You can see how tall it would be in relationship to the building. So those concrete piers that would be here would be level with the foundation of the existing building, and so the monument sign would sit on the corner at about that scale. The church, in addition to coming before you folks today, the church on its own initiative noticed the neighbors and held a building plan information open house on November 16th, 2010. They did have a good turnout of folks, and the primary issue that was brought back was the need for the parkway, that little strip along California Street. And so we have incorporated that with the guidance of the planning department. And then we met with Ward 1 NAB folks, as you can see from the review comment sheets that are on your agenda or on your package on January 5th, and that was very supportive, and the NAB was unanimously supportive of us. That is the project, and I'm certainly open to taking any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Staff, we will call you,
okay,
so stay close. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Kelly Sleep, Assistant Planner. Okay. The applicant did a good job presenting the request. The project, as proposed, is reduced in intensity and density than the prior entitlement that they received back in 2008 due to the elimination of a two-story, 15,000 square foot office addition established as part of Phase 2 of the prior project. The applicant has demonstrated, by way of parking agreements, that they have retained an additional 22 off-site parking spaces above the required 17 parking spaces based on their expansion. To date, I have not received any phone calls inquiring on the project or in opposition. However, I have received one email, which I presented to you here tonight, written by Mark Dodson. Also, you probably noticed I provided you a copy of a memo tonight. Staff recommended changes to conditions numbers 5, 7, and 19. Conditions 5 and 19 were modified to ensure that all church facility users, whether they are church or non-church group-related activities, were treated equitably with regard to the maximum number of attendees during meetings subject to the available parking. The only change to condition number 7 was the addition to the last sentence on the top of page 2 to place the applicants on notice that failure to maintain the 17 required off-site parking spaces would result in an abandonment of their variance. With recommended conditions added to the staff report, staff can make the findings. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Kelly. Sure. Robert, can we bring the lights up, please? Okay, thank you for your presentation. At this time, I'd like to open public comment up. And I have received 2 requests to speak forms. Actually, one is a request to speak form, and the other is a not to request speak form. But there were some comments written, and at this time, I would like to ask my vice chair to read the comments of Melinda Guston into the record.
And the comments go, I support the project and believe the findings can be made to approve the SUP compatible and with adjacent buildings, will stimulate investment and vitality in the neighborhood. I own 2 historic properties close to the project, and I think this will enhance California and the Arlington corridor.
Thank you, Commissioner Woosley. The other is Greg Addington. Is Greg still here? Greg, if you'd come up to the podium, please. You'll have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, members of the commission. I'm Greg Addington. I speak in support of the proposed permit. I've lived in the neighborhood for nearly 18 years, and I also attend services and other gatherings at the Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd. My view is that places where people of faith gather are important to a healthy community and a healthy environment, a healthy neighborhood. Places where people of all types gather during the week are also important, whether they are there for a common interest to talk about travel and books and music, or where to buy shoes, or whether they're there to seek comfort or relief from challenges in their life, such as addictions or advice on child rearing and personal finance, or any of the other challenges that are common to us all. Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd has been such a place for several decades in its current location, and the fact is it can't remain viable in that location without an enhanced facility such as is being proposed. Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd has been a good neighbor in this neighborhood for many decades. As Pastor Carl mentioned, it is a place where people people recognize it, as many churches are so recognized, as a place where people can go to find rest if they need rest, a place for quiet contemplation if they need that, or a place to gather for addiction challenges, and where people who are seeking relief from any of life's challenges can find a welcoming place to sit and a welcoming ear. So I would urge the commission to act favorably on the proposed permit and to report it favorably to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, those are the only 2 requests to speak forms I received this evening. Is there anyone else here in the audience who did not fill out a request to speak form who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Hearing and seeing none, I will close public comment at this time and bring it back to the commission for questions or discussion. I have a question for staff. Kelly. In the conditions, number 17 and 18 discuss signage to be put in and around the project at its completion, essentially no parking signs.
Oh, correct.
My question was, who's going to be maintaining those signs after is that something that the city accepts and then they maintain them?
They'll maintain them, and they'll also be the ones to enforce them.
Enforce it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure that if they were tagged or marred or whatever, who would be the one to replace them, and that's the answer is the city of Reno.
I believe that to be the case. We'll let Bill Gall, one of the engineers, make that determination.
Yeah, for the record, Bill Gall, city engineer. Yeah, they have to get an encroachment permit to install the signs and put them in. They will be in public property, public right-of-way, and Public Works will maintain those no parking signs if they're damaged and that kind of stuff. And as far as enforcement in the area, call Reno Direct and enforcement will come out.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Kelly, one last question. There's quite a bit of discussion here about parking concerns in the neighborhood and parking on city streets. When I drove around this neighborhood diligently this morning and yesterday morning, I didn't see any signage limiting parking to the area. Is this more or less going to be an honor system? Because I see conditions in here and
well, there are conditions.
And what if those conditions are broken? I mean, how does that affect their SUP?
Well, if somebody notifies us, then we'll notify the church in order to put those signs up. But as part of the conditions, each one of those sites have to be signed as to the times and available hours for the off-site. And then, as you recall, with each meeting, the church is also responsible to hand out notices to the attendees as to where they can they can park. And then there's also provisions with the conditions where they can't park based on a few of the neighboring streets.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I have no further questions. If there's no further questions from Commission, I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Romeo?
Mr. Chairman, in the case of LDC 11-00022, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit and variances subject to conditions, including the modification of conditions 5, 7, and 19.
Commissioner Romeo, before you go any further, can I ask you to separate those and do them separately, please? Special use permit is a motion and the variance is a motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Move to approve the special use permit, subject to conditions, with the modifications to 5, 7, and 19. I can make the findings.
Thank you.
Second, I can make the findings.
I have a second from Commissioner Newberg, and this is for a motion on the SUP. Is there any further discussion or questions? None? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? SUP motion carries unanimously. Commissioner Romeo, on the variance.
Mr. Chairman, the case of LDC 11-00022, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the variance subject to conditions, including the modifications to 5, 7, and 19, and I can make the findings.
Thank you.
Second, Jim Newberg.
Commissioner Newberg seconds. I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion? Questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Marilyn, question for you, please. At this time, should I read our paragraph?
If you would, please.
Thank you. Any action taken by the Planning Commission on a tentative map, special use permit, variance, or skyway is final unless appealed. Any person aggrieved by the decision may file an appeal. Each person, entity must make his, her, its own appeal. Appeals must be filed with the city clerk within 10 days of the Planning Commission hearing by submitting the appropriate form and fee. All other matters will be forwarded to the City Council with Planning Commission recommendation. Thank you. Next on our agenda was to be LDC 11-00028. If anybody has come in regarding Del Taco Northtown Lane, as I announced earlier, that has been postponed and will be dealt with at a later date. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is LDC 11-00032, TCA Properties. We do have Pat back with us. Thank you. If the
Mr.
applicant...
Chair, Ms. Hanson is asking that you take just 30 seconds for her, please.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Robert.
Mrs. Hanson would like to have a 5-minute recess while we get this thing reset, please.
All
Thank you,
right.
sir.
At this point, we will have a 5-minute recess. We will reconvene in 5 minutes, approximately 6:50. Next on our agenda is item number 4, LDC 11-00032 TCA Properties. The applicant is at the podium. John, before you get started, I would like to ask for disclosures and/or recusals. Commissioner Woosley, we will start with you.
Yes, I need to recuse myself tonight. The company I work for has done previous studies with the applicant, and after discussing with council, it's been decided it'd be best if I recuse myself tonight.
Thank you. Commissioner Egan.
Yeah, I've had 2 or 3 conversations on the phone with Chris Barrett, and that was it.
Thank you. Commissioner Newbert.
I have met and had conversations with the applicant's representatives.
Thank you. Commissioner Romeo.
I have met with the applicant's representatives and received a handful of emails regarding this issue.
Thank you. Commissioner Kaufman.
I've met a couple times with the applicant's representative on this.
Thank you. Commissioner Haltom.
Likewise, I too have met with the applicant's representative.
Okay. I also have met with the applicant's representative and had questions with staff. Received a couple of emails. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, the applicant's representative, please introduce himself. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Good evening. John Crumpot. Excuse me.
Speak up a little bit, please.
Oh,
John.
geez, my voice is that
Yeah.
good enough? It's the okay. John Crumpot with KLS Planning, representing the applicant, who is TCA Properties. Thank you for your time this evening, Commissioners. I'd like to introduce a couple of people on our team. I have with us this evening Matt Setti, who's a senior scientist with JBR Environmental. His discipline of study is hydrology, biology, riparian vegetation. Excuse me. Certainly has expertise in the areas that are germane to what's on the table this evening, with 2 what I would call heavyweight environmental SUPs. In addition, Sean Crum is our civil engineer. Now, Sean also has some expertise in hydrology. He did the grading, and then he did the design of the drainage structure that is put in the place of the drainage way, as you see it in the application. So Sean is with us as well. I would like to touch just very briefly, Commissioners, on the history. The reason it's important here, because the map you see this evening right here has been the same map that we've had in process for about 10 months. You know that we came through for the master plan zone change. This commission, with the exception of Patrick Egan, supported that in majority. We went on to city council. We were ratified at regional for the master plan, the zone change. And what's important about the history is that these gentlemen, these applicants, TCA Properties, have, since the beginning of time, going back 10 years ago, represented exactly what we're coming forward with tonight, which is they wanted to go prepare the property for development. That means 2 special use permits, both of what, in my perspective, are environmental permits. I think we need to take it very seriously, because as the staff report has indicated, it's, in my opinion, also a pretty aggressive position against this. And Vern and I, thank God, we're sitting there smiling at one another, but I think it's amazing how different the perspectives are. I would point out also that I am very much appreciative of the staff recommendation. It was no less than surprising to me to actually get here 6 weeks after application, or I guess it's 8 weeks. But it was a very, very committed job on the part of Vern Close and the other staff, not to dismiss. He was the front man, so I know him day to day, and a lot of background work, and I very much appreciate his effort in doing this, as well as Ms. Hanson and the rest of staff. So thank you guys. You guys know that, again, these ordinances there's so much to them on a technical level. They're very, very deep and technical. And my whole basis for what we have on the table, the real basis for validating our application is 3 points that I have. And I think everything else is secondary, tertiary, and really about detail and minutia following these 3 points. The big picture is 2 environmental ordinances, hillside and drainage way. Hillside and drainage way both kicked in by a single measure, okay? And that is average slope on hillside and amount of acreage that drains through the property on the drainage way. One measure, and you kick in the ordinance. So when you say it's a major drainage way, it's major because it drains 100 acres. There's no science to support that. My point is that it doesn't mean it's a major amount of water. It means it's a major drainage way because of that single criteria. Similar on the slope, we kick in the hillside ordinance, it brings a lot of drama to the arena. The issue on the slope is that on a qualitative basis, we look at it with professionals in the field, we look at it with science and evaluate those slopes. How nice are those slopes? How meaningful are they to our community? And I think it's really important to drill down on that because you got at the end of the day, a pretty major earthwork job that we're trying to do, but we got a couple of ordinances that are certainly not friendly in this case. And so we're trying to validate an application in the context of some policy that's really not working for us. So big picture, the 3 points. Number one is two environmental ordinances. Our way of working with that is based on science and, like I said, the qualitative part. I think there's a huge burden on this applicant to show that this is a credible application with the science. And so what we do is hired the experts. I'm going to read some of the areas of what were studied: tributary connectivity, open space trail connections, drainage way quality. Now, these are kind of the judgment and the qualitative stuff that I'm referring to. On more science-based, water quality, hydrology, that's the amount of water and how you manage the velocity and coming out of the dissipation structure and that whole ball of wax. Wildlife, riparian plants, it's really the only vegetation on the property with the exception of cheatgrass. Cultural resources, which is, of course, archaeology, it's a requirement of the ordinance. Infiltration, and a wetland delineation, which is really a subset of a water of the U.S. Now, these are not all individual studies. They are parts of studies, but they're topic areas. I'm letting the commission know that I think we did a very thorough and responsible job in trying to make our case and looking about the ordinance on a much deeper level than just on the policy basis. Again, my point is that when you get into the science, what our experts are saying is the code says no, the master plan says no. We do it with some expertise in science and some judgment and say, there's really not a lot here. No significant environmental impact with respect to any of those areas of study. No significant environmental impact. So if you believe in those studies and you accept those as being valid or true, and some of this is perspective, then what it really reduces this to, in my understanding, is about topography. And that is absolutely environmental. I can't discount that. That's another environmental issue. But if everything else is true and you're comfortable with that, then this is about topography. And we're altering topography. So then you look at the quality of the hillside, you look at the vegetation, you look at the vegetation at the bottom of the drainage way, which in my opinion has the most value of the whole thing. And it then becomes, if it's manipulating topography and changing that with grading, then it really becomes a game of visual impact. And how do we deal with visual impacts? We deal with that in good design. And I believe our team has done an excellent job in design, and really what it means is grading that integrates with the natural environment so you don't see scarring. It means doing a nice job on revegetation. It means doing a nice job on landscaping. I think we have an excellent solution on that. And I think, all of us on the team have a lot of pride in what we do and how we represent this community, and at the end of the day, it's all about the community. So that's a first point, a lot of my first point. Environmental basis of the ordinances, we hammer away with science, go much deeper into the issues aside from the policy, and feel that there's not adverse environmental impact. Second point might even be bigger, and it gets very convoluted, but might be the biggest thing on the table in my opinion, and that is the Army Corps permit. And I say that because now that's a separate process, and staff has pointed it out in the staff report, and in fairness to what they're saying, they're absolutely right that you can't muddy the waters between a federal process and a local process. But the point is we're dealing with the environment here. Are we taking care of the environment in the community? And why I say I think it might be the single biggest issue is because the Army Corps claims jurisdiction of a tributary of the Truckee River. This is a tributary of the Truckee River. There's no question about that. They claim jurisdiction of it. That means they regulate it and they permitted it. And they permitted it with a nationwide permit. And that permit is exactly granting approval for what we have proposed, 1,000 feet of fill with a pipe in the bottom. So I ask all of you, anybody in the community, anybody on the planet, is there any greater environmental jewel in this region than the Truckee River? We can talk about slopes and we can talk about an ephemeral drainage way, but what about the Truckee River? So my point is that, yes, that's not a local process, but certainly the biggest environmental issue that we have under any estimation in our region. And so my point is, if Army Corps has permitted this with a nationwide permit because they have jurisdiction over that tributary, now they asked for mitigation, and these gentlemen gave them mitigation. And that mitigation was to do a reestablishment of the riparian zone. Now, please track with me on this riparian thing, because you look at this big drainage way, and they say none of that counts with respect to the environment. It's where the watermark is. And the watermark is only a couple feet high and a couple of feet wide. And you sum up that acreage, which is associated with water and the riparian plants, and it's been established just downstream. This is kind of whited out on the map, but you can see the green splash of vegetation. That was deed restricted many years ago by these guys, but it related to the Army Corps approval of the 1,000 feet, the fill. And the thing that was very compelling to them, we met with them several times, and I've been at this, they've renewed the permit a couple of times. They did it the last time in October of this last year. And it was called a compensatory mitigation plan, which says they reestablished what was lost in riparian vegetation at a 10-to-1 ratio. And so that's saying you're doing a heck of a lot better in the immediate area than what we've lost on the property. That's the riparian vegetation. And that's the only part that's really associated with water. In addition, and you could get into this with Matt, whose opinion I respect immensely on this, Matt Setti, but he educated me yesterday when we were preparing for the hearing about sedimentation. He says, and I now I'm paraphrasing and I'm outside of my area of expertise, but the point being sedimentation is a big thing with these drainage ways. And he says, you've created a lot better sedimentation area downstream where it's flat, bigger area, vegetation, wildlife and plant life habitat that's a lot more robust than what we have in the subject drainage way. My third point, and this is getting on a slippery slope, and I have to say this because I believe it, and it might be wrong, but it's certainly not crossing the line on an ethical basis. And that is, I'm insisting that this is a disturbed drainage way. And our classification calls it natural. And staff's probably rolling their eyes at me. But what I'm saying is, when you have a drainage system, and we call it about a system, okay, and it's cut off at the Northgate Golf Course, flat cut off from the Peavine watershed, cut off and put in a detention basin, and basically starts all over from that point, and then crossed at 5 road crossings with a freeway going over it, with pipes in the ground, and filled, okay? This is filled, it's not bridged, it's filled. And then you go further downstream, and there's 2 more road crossings, then a complete massacre of the remainder of it south of 4th Street to the river. How do you call that natural? And by the way, in my opinion, and I don't know this, I think it's natural on this property, but that's not the point. The point is, it's a system. And I believe it's very much disturbed as a system. It's natural in this segment, but that doesn't make it natural as a drainage way. The other thing that's key about that, by the way, please, gentlemen, help me understand. If this is not a disturbed drainage way, I'm going to read it from our policy, the definition of a disturbed drainage way. Disturbed drainage way, major drainage ways which have been or will be significantly graded, filled, or otherwise altered by man. End of story. Significantly graded, and all the indications I've mentioned, It may have been graded on the site. I don't think so. I agree with Mr. Close on that. Filled, obviously filled for the roadway crossings, otherwise altered by man. These gentlemen that are my clients insist that this thing's been altered. I can't say that. There's nothing conclusive. It's examination with the eye. At the bottom of it, I think it looks like it's in good condition. My point about disturbance is, if I'm mistaken, by all means, let's have staff correct that. But what disturbance does is gives us a little more freedom in what we're doing. And I think we can claim that what we're doing is more responsible. If you're the first guy in, and this is really natural, that's a completely different set of standards. So what I understand is this drainage way classification then overstates what's here, it overstates its function, it overstates, or it really binds us in and provides no flexibility for offering a good solution that's not compliant to our public policy. And just because the code doesn't want us to do this doesn't mean that it's not right for what we're doing. One more point about the drainage way is that it's not a wetlands, it's not a stream environment. I know staff's not saying that, but sometimes semantically it gets twisted around. And it is by fact an ephemeral drainage way, which is one that carries water during storm events, during melt-off, during, for urban runoff, and then it's dry for the remainder of the year. When our biologists went out there, they said it was dry. That was because they did this when we were in the application for the master plan amendment. So, wow, I burned up a lot of time. I didn't mean to do that much. I have my own analysis, Mr. Chairman, of the SUP and variance findings. I'll go into those if you wish. Obviously, there's a legal basis of approval on the project. Also, I have exhibits of photo simulations, existing proposed conditions. I think the photo sims might be important, just again to show what we think we can do with the finished environment, how good that would look. I've got my analysis going back to the policy drainage way protection standards, the purpose of the hillside ordinance, the purpose of the drainage way ordinance, and also have my list of experts in their areas of study and what their recommendations were, if you want me to share that. So thank you very much, and I'll just wait for questions.
Thank you, John. Staff? Do you need your 15 minutes, or are you going to be less time than that?
You can put 15 up there.
Thank you.
We're a team effort. I need my presentation up there, though, before you start my clock. That's me. Okay. Good evening, Claudia Hansen, Planning Manager. I am here tonight with Joe Coudrier from our Public Works Department, and he's going to, following my presentation, he's going to touch on some more technical aspects, looking at this drainage way and the proposed fill on the Public Works health of the drainage way flood issues associated with this. And then following that, Vern Close will address the findings specifically and the more technical aspect of the request at hand. Mine's going to be sort of not the 30,000 foot level, the 15,000 foot level, kind of looking at this area, this neighborhood, this neighborhood plan area being the McQueen plan area. Obviously, Peavine Mountain is the source of most of the drainage up in this area. And as we know, water flows downhill. So the starting point of the drainage way, as far as we can tell, is a spring located in the Northgate Golf Course. These were taken back in the spring, so it is a little greener than it is right now. Most of this is white right now. But this is the starting point of this drainage way is within the golf course area from a spring. Below the golf course is a series is a drainage way with a series of maintained and enhanced areas. For the past 20 years, approximately 20 years, the City of Reno, the Planning Commission, City Council staff has maintained this drainage way, has supported the enhancement of this drainage way. You can see how past developments in this area, starting at the very top of the drainage way, have maintained the policies of the master plan and the ordinance by staying out of the drainage way, enhancing it with trail access, and keeping and maintaining the setbacks off of the grade break of the drainage way. So this is up in the North Gate area. Many of you have been here as these subdivisions have come in, and we've required them to maintain the drainage way. The only time that's been crossed is, as Mr. Kompotic stated, is for road crossings, and that's the only place that this drainage way has been disturbed. The trail continues down through it, and every developer from the top to the bottom has maintained that, only disturbing it for the road crossings. The drainage way goes through neighborhoods. You can see on the left, it's a little dark, but you can see on the left that some of them have embraced the drainage way into their amenities. You can see a little bit more formal landscaping and an improved path through the drainage way. Or on the right, you can see where they've kept it a little bit more natural, but still have a trail down there, and the development has stayed out of there other than the road crossings. The lower right, you can see that kind of tan hill in the distance, and that would be the subject site. This is the north side of the freeway, just above the subject site. And again, this has been maintained, trail access through there, and the development, adjacent development, has stayed out of the drainage way. Again, from top to bottom, we have maintained staying out of the drainage way through all the projects that have come in. This is the Charlins PUD area, most of these shots. They've stayed out of the drainage way, and the setbacks have been maintained for approximately 20 years. This is the subject site. There was a fire on the site 3 years ago, maybe something like that, 3 or 4 years ago, where a lot of the vegetation on site was lost. But there is still a bit of vegetation on there, with a bit of it coming back. This is the lower part of the drainage way. You can see on that lower right corner where the remains of the burned shrubs on the left side of that lower right picture were lost in the fire. But on the right side of that picture, you can see where they're coming back quite nicely due to the water that's present there for a portion of the year. Traveling south of the site, this is down by the Truckee River Highlands development. As a part of that project, that's a cluster development, and as most of you know, the cluster development process allows you to develop smaller sites, smaller lot sizes under an existing zoning district if you dedicate an area as open space. This was the area that they set aside and have restored as a riparian area, potentially a wetland as well, and have done a great job associated with the Truckee River Highlands project just below the subject site. Below that, it does cross 4th Street, and it is an open drainage way between the Lavender Farms project and the trailer park to the other side. I would say our drainage way improvement and enhancement techniques have definitely improved. But again, this has been maintained as an open drainage way, and we would hope that one day this was restored to a little bit better quality, or a lot better quality, I should say. And then the lower right, obviously, that all this drainage does go to the river. And here we are at the discharge point at the Truckee River where this drainage way comes out. This is just sort of a very simple version of the natural versus urbanized drainage ways. You've got the natural one on the left being the slower flow, natural cleansing, recharge of the water, and a low runoff, a much healthier environment for the drainage way. Maintaining as much open drainage way as possible is the healthier way to go. The right side being the more urbanized environment where you pipe everything, has a more rapid flow, higher pollutant wash off, and there's no recharge to the water table. The proposed trail in the drainage way, and Vern will touch on this a little bit more. And and I don't have a pointer here, I'm sorry. But the trail, the drainage way is shown on the McQueen neighborhood plan, and it does go through the site. Let me see if I have that. Well, anyway, it does go through the site. To go down the drainage way would be a very simple enhancement into the drainage way, and it's an appropriate grade for a trail. Would provide access from the top of the drainage way to the Truckee River, and this would be a key section to provide that, I don't want to say accessible as an ADA, but a more accessible route. The master plan policies associated with this, and Vern will touch on this as well, and these are the policies that have been in place for approximately 20 years and have been supported by City Council and Planning Commission on past approvals of projects adjacent to this drainage way. Drainage courses are not to be channelized. There should be no net loss of stream environments. It says wetlands. I'm not saying that there's a wetland on the site, but there should be no net loss of stream environments. Protect the functions of the drainage ways, which I covered a couple slides ago with the natural versus urbanized drainage courses. And all natural drainage ways should be retained and restored, and we should protect wildlife habitats, including stream environments. That includes my presentation, and I am going to turn this over to Joe Coudrier now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claudia. Members of the commission, thanks for having me here tonight. Once again, Joe Coudrier with Public Works, and we've been working with the community development. I'm a civil engineer with Public Works. I've also been working with two of my colleagues, Carrie Lanza, also with Public Works, and Linnell Garfield, a scientist, a toxicologist with a master's in degree. And she also was on site with us. And we've been working with Vern and Claudia on some recommendations. I'll keep this brief because I want to give Vern some time as well. Basically, just kind of following, I think, John's lead a little bit. And Claudia, I think Claudia painted a really good picture of what this is. We're looking at a system, and if we start to break this down and look at little pieces, it's easy to forget the value of the drainage way as a whole. And because this is a linear feature, we need to respect that. And if we start to chop that up, we lose that value. And it's not the same as maybe if you got, a circular square-shaped development, you take out a corner. When you take out a piece of a drainage way, you lose the linkage. And to come back just even to the word drainage way for a moment, we keep saying drainage way, but this is, and John mentioned, it's an ephemeral stream, so it flows part of the year. It's not just a roadside ditch. I'm gonna concede that this isn't Thomas Creek or White's Creek, but I think that's where we start to differ, because this, even though it might not be that type of mountain stream with timber and that you might see on the mountainsides, the hillsides here, still does have value. And I think there's probably two, I'd almost call them maybe our flagship policies that I really like to point some attention to tonight, which is one of them is E31. It says that the city should promote the protection, conservation, and acquisition of significant wildlife habitats. And then it goes on to lump these together with prominent ridgelines, other natural and scenic resources for the purposes of wildlife survival, community education, research, recreation, and aesthetics. And along with that, there's one other that I really like to focus some attention on, which is E11, one of our master plan policy items that says all drainage ways, even those with limited riparian vegetation and those that are disturbed, should be retained and restored. And what I think happens is we start to sort of lose sight, as a community of the value of this, because it's not something else and we forget what it is. There's no way to go back. And if we lose the value here due to economic constraints, it's very doubtful that this might ever be restored. Just a few closing points I'd like to make here. In an arid environment, once again, these are treasures, and John alluded to the Truckee River being a treasure. I would also say that riparian corridors are treasures. We don't want to forget the relief that this provides from the urban setting, as well as the trails. Some water quality benefits, I'm not going to say huge, but there are some water quality benefits. And as a general rule, piping a system will tend to degrade water quality through loss of natural processes rather than add to it. And Vern, I'm going to go ahead and invite you up because we've got about 5 minutes here.
Good evening, Vern Close, Senior Planner. The areas that I'm going to touch on are the special use permit and variance findings. As you know, this project consists of special use permits and variances to grade the site and set the stage for future development of the property. In order to approve the special use permits and variances, all of the applicable findings must be made. The findings for the special use permits include the general special use permit findings, as well as those required to approve the major drainage way hillside development and cuts and fills. After reviewing the general special use permit finding, staff was unable to make finding B, consistency with a master plan. Although the site has a master plan designation of general commercial in the McQueen plan, it is not consistent with the majority of the applicable master plan policies and objectives. As indicated in Ms. Hansen's presentation, this project does not comply with a number of the city's environmental policies. It is also inconsistent with several objectives and the major drainageway section of the conservation plan as indicated on pages 13 and 14 of the staff report. These policies and objectives indicate that natural major drainageway should be retained as open space, not channelized or filled. These policies and objectives also state that disturbances within drainageway should be limited to what is required to construct paths and necessary roadway and utility crossings. As seen from the presentation, that's basically what's occurred on this drainageway is necessary roadway crossings. The project simply proposes to fill and eliminate a 1,000-foot-long section of what we consider a natural drainageway, because that's what it's designated on the major drainageways plan, which has remained open except for necessary crossings within both upstream and downstream developments over the last 20 years. The applicant has proposed no alternatives such as bridging or a reduced amount of fill to connect the east and west sides of the property, which would minimize the grading impacts of the drainageway and its associated steep slopes. This proposal would result in the removal of riparian vegetation from the site and the loss of habitat, open space, and wildlife areas, as well as the elimination of significant natural features with little or no mitigation. This type of development is not supported by the master plan policies and objectives as cited in the staff report. Also, as indicated in the staff report, staff cannot make all the applicable findings and considerations to approve the major drainageway and hillside development special use permits. For example, finding D of the drainageway special use permit requires that visual and aesthetic impacts be mitigated as viewed from adjacent streets, residential areas, and open space areas. This proposal would totally eliminate the drainageway by filling it and replacing it with a 20-acre revegetated flat pad over the drainageway with a 110-foot tall 2-to-1 slope at its southern end. There has been no attempt to incorporate the drainageway into the project. In addition, the master plan policies and objectives cited in the staff report, the drainageway section of code, which is 1812-1905, contains additional standards for natural drainageways, which states very clearly that all major drainageways must be preserved as open space, shall remain undisturbed except for enhancements to native vegetation, and grading shall not occur except what is required to construct paths and utilities and necessary road crossings, and if channelization is deemed necessary, natural materials must be utilized. None of those things are being proposed with this particular application. The application also minimizes the existing wildlife and vegetation values of the site. This is a functioning natural system that will be completely eliminated by this project. The applicant proposal to replace the existing 0.19 acres of riparian vegetation at a 10-to-1 ratio on an adjacent site does address what the Army Corps of Engineers required when they reapproved their permit. However, it does not address the removal of the on-site riparian area in conjunction with the total loss of 10 acres of upland vegetation and wildlife habitat contained within the drainageway. It also does not consider that the area proposed for this mitigation is located off-site and was required to be restored as part of the required open space mitigation for the adjacent residential cluster development. Findings, I'll just go to the variance portion. Staff cannot make all the findings necessary to approve the variance, specifically findings A, B, and D. Finding A is designed to consider relief for sites which have exceptional situation or conditions such as topography at the time the ordinance was enacted. Well, the hillside ordinance was enacted expressly to address developments on sites with steep slopes and significant topography, such as this site contains. and to address and prevent large-scale development on or removal of significant slopes, including those associated with major drainage ways. When the Hillside Ordinance was amended in 2004, drainage ways were added in because it was considered, they usually function together, so it was strengthened to include restrictions in major drainage ways. The applicant has options that could reasonably allow about 17 acres of the site to be developed while conforming with the Hillside Ordinance open space requirements. As proposed, 7.3 acres can be developed without approval of the variance, so there is no exceptional situation related to this request. Finding B addresses hardships to the property owner. As discussed in the staff report, the applicant has other options available that would allow reasonable use of the property within the requirements of the ordinance. Therefore, staff believes there is no hardship to the property owner. I guess I'm running out of time, so I'll wrap it up here.
Thank you for wrapping it up, Vern.
Staff is recommending denial, as you may have guessed. We did receive 4 phone calls, 1 in favor, 3 in opposition, 1 which was enforced with an email that I put up on that you all received, and I also put up on the desk for you. And this particular proposal, the SUPs and variances were not presented to either the NAB, either of the Ward 1 or Ward 5 NABs. And then as a point of clarification, I don't know if you saw it in the report, but on Exhibit 1, or Exhibit I, the conditions, pages 2 and 3 were repeated, so there's not 5 pages, there's just 3. And Exhibit K, the NAB comments, there were only 8 pages, not 10 as indicated on the staff report. So that concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I would like to open up public comment, and I've received several requests to speak forms. I will ask anybody who is in the audience who has not filled out a request to speak form to please see Robert over here to my right. He has the forms available either before or after you have spoken, if you haven't filled one out already. I will start first with Doug Smith. Following Doug will be Lori Ray. You will have 3 minutes, Doug.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman, members of the Reno City Planning Commission, my name is Doug Smith. I'm a member of the Scenic Nevada Board of Directors and also the Scenic America Board of Directors. Our principal activity is to educate the general public in the economic, social, and cultural benefits of scenic preservation by means of encouraging billboard and sign control, protecting and supporting scenic byways, promoting sound wall alternatives, supporting open space and greenways plans, minimizing the impact of cell towers, preserving hillsides, and protecting drainways. Scenic Nevada is opposed to this project because it fills a natural major drainway. We would urge you to support staff which has proposed a viable alternative to filling in this drainage way. We also urge you to uphold the city's codes that protect major drainage ways from these types of projects. I served on the Reno City Planning Commission and the Ward 1 Neighborhood Advisory Board for several years. And I don't recall ever seeing a project like this, which will eliminate a 10-year or acre major drainage way. Please recommend denial of these special use permits and variances. Thank you for your kind attention and cooperation.
Thank you, Doug. Lori? Following Lori Ray will be Mark Ray.
Good evening. My name is Lori Ray, and I'm here representing Scenic Nevada. The reason the Hillside Ordinance was revised in 2004 was precisely to prevent this type of project that would ruin the natural topographic features, obliterating a 10-acre drainage way, providing too little or unusable open space and trails. Not to mention the views from our roadsides. Once it's flattened out, Scenic Nevada is concerned the next property owners will begin erecting digital billboards and flashing on-premise signs to attract freeway drivers to their new commercial location. Piping this drainage way would eliminate wildlife habitat, would cover over natural areas for water filtration, which contributes to water pollution and possible erosion downstream from the site. Shouldn't we be concerned about water quality here? And at some date in the future, are we going to need another water treatment plant because we've eliminated one drainage way after another? Reviewing the staff report and the city codes and plans, this project is contrary or violates some of the drainage way protection standards, the conservation plan, the hillside ordinance, and the master plan. In the first paragraph of the drainage way code, the findings say the drainage ways are important to the public health, safety, and welfare and should be preserved as open space. The project is also contrary to 6 of the 7 stated purposes of the drainage way code, 4 of 6 protection standards, 3 of 7 additional standards for natural drainage ways. This project is contrary or violates 3 of 5 stated purposes of the hillside ordinance, 2 of 6 of the open space requirements. Public Works cited 8 master plan policies that cover drainage ways, wildlife habitat, stream environments, riparian, open space, and water quality. And development staff found 12 policies and objectives that show that the project is inconsistent with the master plan. So Scenic Nevada is wondering how anyone can make the special use permit findings. How can anyone find that the project is in substantial conformance with the master plan? How can anyone find that the proposed location enhances the character of the area? Or how can it the project provide open space based on the hillside constraints? The slopes, and also how can the slopes be treated in a manner which does not create a negative visual impact? How can anyone make the findings for a variance? What is the exceptional and undue hardship? Scenic Nevada isn't asking these people not to build, but to be reasonable and responsible and do the right thing for the community. Staff has suggested a reasonable alternative: 6 acres commercial on the eastern portion, 11.6 acres of medium density on the west side, separated by the 10-acre drainage way. Left is undeveloped open space which can be bridged or filled just enough to put a road in at the north section. So please do not recommend approval of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark? Following Mark will be Jill Berryman.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Mark Ray. I live at 2802 Outlook Drive here in Reno. I had some written remarks, but I wanted to respond instead of that to what I heard from the applicant. I'm a lawyer by occupation, and heard the applicant tell you flat out pretty much, we're not going to follow your laws. We know we're not following your laws, but I got a group of people here, experts, tell me we don't have to. They're scientists, and basically your laws don't really, in their view, comport with what they think should be done with this particular terrain. And they told us that these experts have been using the same consistent plan for 10 whole months about this. And I thought to myself, wow, if I could come to court and tell a judge that, or a jury like you. Well, for 10 months, I've been thinking with my experts, the hired guns that I paid for to come and testify for me, that we should not follow your laws. Now, let's forget about the 20 years of ordinances that have been passed by the city and complied with by all the other developers upstream, because for the last 10 months, we've consistently not wanted to follow your laws. That's a very invalid argument, and if we're not going to follow the laws, then we can all go home, because there's no reason to be here. If all the codes that we're supposed to be following don't apply anymore, then why do we need a planning commission or a city council? I live on a major drainage way, and my wife and I have spent the last 10 years preserving it. We've testified at the hearings. You've seen us before. My wife was chosen by Ron Cobb of this board to serve on the neighborhood representative body that developed the revisions to the Hillside Ordinance in 2004. We have a lot of firsthand knowledge of how valuable these natural resources are. Gentlemen, these major drainage ways, for better or worse, no matter what the scientists say, these are Nevada. This is what Nevada looks like. Ephemeral streams are throughout this state in all of our mountain ranges. These drainage ways make up our state. We should not pave over our state. I'm asking you, please, to give this drainage way your protection, because it deserves it. Please uphold the law, and please deny the special use permits and variances on this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jill?
guys print too many papers. Hi, my name is Jill Berryman. I live at 8102 Leroy Street. This area in orange, that's my property. So in all of these reports and all of these papers, when they refer to the closest residential person, that'd be me. I've lived there for a little over 13 years. I've done a little construction in my lifetime, including the Riverside Artist Lofts, and so I know a little bit about the games that are played. I think it's very interesting, and I know Boris, I know Mike, I know John, that they invited all of you to go out and see their site, tell you all their plans, but they didn't invite the neighborhood. Apparently, they just figured we didn't count. We weren't a part of things. So we went through the whole master plan amendment. We told you why we didn't like it. You passed it anyway because you felt that your hands were tied. Well, now we have specific questions about special use permits. The staff has told you, Scenic Nevada has told you that they're just wrong. I think it's really interesting that Mr. Kropotkin likes the codes by the Army Corps of Engineers because they agree with what he wants to do, but he doesn't like the City of Reno's codes. It can't be a double standard. It doesn't work that way. He refers to systems. I think right now a lot of systems are broken. Do we really need any more commercial property? I mean, my board president at Sierra Arts is a leaser for commercial property, and he's got way more than he can deal with. They knew what the challenges were with this property when they purchased it. They knew about these hillsides. I purchased my property because of those hillsides, because of that riparian place. And in a report from May 5th, 2010 from JBR, it tells us that we don't have any deer and we don't have any wildlife. However, I do see now in Exhibit D, mule deer, which were all the mule deer that we told you already live there, that cross our property, that are a part of our environment. It says that there are no raptors that exist there. It's really funny because I have a hawk who's making a nest in my pine tree outside my bedroom door. There are things here. You can pay consultants to tell you what you want to hear and what you want commissioners and councils and all the rest, what they think that they want to hear. I would ask you to listen to the staff and listen to the neighborhood about how we feel about our open space and the reason why we bought our property where we did. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the requests to speak forms I have. Is there anybody else here in the audience who did not fill out a request to speak form who wishes to speak? Okay. Dave Snellgrove, would you please come forward? Thank you.
Could I get the, the overhead's on, never mind. For the record, Dave Snellgrove with Wood Rogers. I submitted a letter via email to Vern Kloos, which I believe all of you are in receipt of, and there was a map exhibit with that. The simple request that was made, because this does include what's been known and called for quite some time as the Flying J property, is a request that if it can be conditioned, we would like to see that the access that was established in a recorded map in 2004, that be conditioned to continue on. I've heard from staff through an email today that this may be something that is best handled just property owner to property owner. Normally I'd agree with that. After talking to the property owner, my client today who owns the property to the east of the Flying J parcel, over the years there have been many attempts to try and contact Flying J, and there is no callback, no responsiveness, or no, we're not interested. They would like to get something resolved, but we do have a group who has basically avoided talking about the situation in terms of access for my client. We would request that should this be approved, that a condition be added to do what's right. You've got an 85-acre piece of property, and I will identify where that property is. Oop, other way. In a little greater detail, it is 85 acres located right here. This is the Flying J parcel. This is the TCA property. It has the drainage way. So that access runs between the Simons property and the Simons and Flying J property, and comes up to about 50 feet from property line, very distinctly cut off when that boundary line adjustment. We're looking for what's right to serve this area in the long run in the future, and appreciate your consideration on that. In general, I would like to point out, with the short remaining time that I have left, in general, I am in agreement with the request that is being made. Not a popular opinion with some of the other speakers, but I would like to point out a couple things. The 100-acre catchment area associated with the hillside ordinance, from being a practitioner and designer in terms of properties, the 100 acres does create tremendous difficulties, and I can identify that there are enhanced drainage ways, whether they've been natural or disturbed, enhanced drainage ways or filled-in drainage ways that are piped partially or that end up with trail systems in them that turn out, arguably, in my opinion, better than the natural environment would be. And I'll point to Allen Creek as the one, because I'm really short on time. That is a very heavily used trail. I would like to hit on the hillside ordinance aspects of this, and I agree with the hillside ordinance. It's been created as a one-glove-fits-all. I, too, was on the ad hoc committee in 2004 that revised this ordinance, and I feel that when it was revised, it went to the most restrictive level it could have possibly gone at that time. I didn't agree with the end result of that, and I'd like to see some reasonableness to it. I want to point out a couple things. That the Wingfield Towers project, when that went through the process, that was a hillside ordinance project right in the city. Also, Maryville and Maryville West, which are up on the North Virginia Street Transit Corridor, were considered hillside ordinance. I think you can look at those properties and go, well, is that
Dave,
really
I need to ask
hillside?
you to wrap it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Received another one from Matthew Setti. Matthew, you will have 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Matthew Setti. I'm one of the managers and senior scientists of JBR Environmental. I'm really not here to talk about the ordinance issues. We were retained on this project to talk about the scientific integrity of the reports that were done. And I just would like to make a comment and a clarification to some of the statements that were made regarding the content of how this is either habitat or not habitat. The determination of open space being supportable habitat for a particular group of wildlife has more to consider in it than just whether or not that the animal walks through there. I have raccoons in my garage, but my garage is not raccoon habitat. It comes down to that. All of the 6 reports that we have read from leading environmental firms here in town were done with a lack of bias associated with them, and they were done to state and federal protocols by licensed registered biologists. So the fact that whether it's city staff or whether it's locals come up and make a statement as something's habitat, or they snapped a photo of a deer on that parcel, should not sway the idea that professionals have gone out through very rigorous scientific investigations as to what constitutes this habitat and what value both the riparian corridors and the habitat have. And so I would certainly hope the council would, or the commission would really consider the integrity of these reports. None of the people involved here were hired guns for the developers. They were all unbiased reports. They were all conducted in accordance with state and federal regulations, the exact same state and federal regulations that the city of Reno employs when they do these determinations. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this agenda item? Hearing and seeing none, I will close public comment, and I will bring it back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Newberg, I'll let you start.
Yeah, John, could you address, have you put some kind of do you have some issues or plans for any kind of wildlife corridor and/or trail extensions in or around the property?
2 different exhibits, is that what you're asking for?
Mm-hmm.
A trail exhibit and wildlife what?
Well, if you like, if there's a wildlife corridor in there, what are you doing to mitigate?
Here's a simpler one. Claudia Hansen pointed out actually if I could show the McQueen, I think we can kind of piece this together. The idea here is that to honor what was represented in the McQueen Master Plan is to have a north-south connection. So the way to do that is you got a crossing at Rive Drive, go along what would be the frontage road. Thank you. Ours is obviously more detailed because it's site-specific. This was on a neighborhood plan level, but what we're dealing with is, there you go, this yellow line right here. And the point being that it's north-south. So what our trail plan does to expand upon what is shown in the McQueen area plan is we make the connection to Robb Drive, we make it through the property. We actually looked at some national trail planning standards to put it through the open space to the south because you got some grade limitations there on a at least 30% slope. And then we'll also tie it into an existing trail so that we would have a nice east-west connection and a north-south connection. That was the idea. Of course, this is not, urban type of trail. It's a staff had a condition in there for a gravel standard and a small, narrower width and so on, appropriate for the conditions.
Okay, now for the wildlife mitigation?
The wildlife what?
Mitigation? where's it
Mitigation.
gonna do that?
I don't have an exhibit on, you're looking for an exhibit on
No,
wildlife?
Do you have plans to protect the critters that come through there?
I might call on Matt to help me out on that because he has that against the science. Matt, can you take that one on?
Our biologists were asked
Matt,
to
would you please introduce yourself?
Matt
for the
Setti with JBR. Our biologists were asked to comment on that, and we did so in our report. One of the findings of that is the culvert coming under I-80 at that location is a 6-foot culvert. I think it runs for about 440 feet. A lot of literature out there says wildlife are not going to enter a black hole like that, and so the issue of connectivity of the bottom of within the stream corridor where the vegetation is, it's a break in the corridor there anyways. It's also broken on the south by 4th Street. In discussions with Division of Wildlife, they've indicated problems in the past with deer on the highway at that location as well as 4th Street. So while habitat could be provided within the parcels as far as being a real connection to the upper portion of the watershed, with those long tunnel type of things, you don't really have that connection. So your only other way is for any animals to come up, cross over the surface of the freeway, and then down into the other side.
Like they got in Montana or Oregon or Canada or someplace like that?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to basically, like for instance, Chalk Creek, the next creek over, has a much larger corridor culvert in there, and there has been recorded deer going through that culvert. But there's a lot of NDOT studies and Caltrans studies that indicate that a 6-foot diameter, you're not going to get a deer to walk through there for 400 feet.
Well, now, the deer are coming up from the Truckee River probably to get up to the grazing that's in there, right?
I'm sorry.
The deer are coming up from the Truckee River, or they're probably down there?
Yeah, I think they're in.
And so
There
they're-
is some riparian habitats around the Truckee River, and as the local neighbors mentioned, their backyards in that area. So there are animals that could make it up that way, both across 4th Street through some residential properties into that area. But to leave that area and make it further up into the watershed, they have to exit the drainage, cross over I-80 on the surface.
Okay, well, I guess my question is for the deer that'll come on the property, is there any kind of, they're obviously gonna go through there to the, whatever the ranch was, the truck stop ranch, whatever that was.
I think that's your best.
Flying J?
This location here is your offsite below
Yeah.
the highland ditch, which a lot of the water that supports that offsite wetland is leakage of the highland ditch there. So I would believe that would be your majority of it. I mean, as far as habitat available in the post-project conditions, we haven't looked at that.
I see. And then, now somebody had talked about the raptors that are in the area. As a scientist, is there anything that can be done with that? I mean, with the hawks and things like that?
Typically, when we do raptor surveys, we're looking at likely roosting spots for raptors. There are no large stands of trees on the property itself, so it's possible, and as what one lady indicated, that there are raptor nests in residential areas adjacent to it, and they potentially could use this to feed on rodents, although it's predominantly noxious weeds in there. So there potentially could be, but typically, regulatory agencies try to limit the exposure of development to raptors in a lot of these areas, for obvious reasons, they are a protected bird.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Romeo.
John, I have a few questions.
Dennis, could you make sure you're speaking into your mic, please?
Can you hear me?
I can't.
Hello?
Thank you.
Okay. I have some questions on some findings, and I'd like an explanation either from you or from one of your team here. For a special use finding, finding A, the proposed use is compatible with existing surrounding land uses and development. I would like just a brief reason why you think we should make that finding.
Excuse me, could you repeat which finding?
It's A on the special use permit. The proposed use is compatible with existing surrounding land uses.
There's a little bit of baggage. We didn't touch on this, but when I was going into the history, I forgot to mention that another use permit, if we were to earn your support this evening, there'd still be another use permit. Now, that was intentional, and that would be for residential adjacency. So there's a...
You got to speak up, John.
Okay, we got a HVAC system that's going crazy here, so I apologize.
Well, speak up a little louder then.
Okay.
Get over the top of it.
What I'm saying is, the finding is the proposed use is compatible with existing and surrounding land uses and development, right? My point is that you have another SUP that would be required with a development project going forward. But aside from that, so there's a layer of protection for the public review there. Aside from that is the separation that you have because of the topography. You got vertical, you got horizontal separation. I looked at 7 sites in the Northwest where you have a shared property line, retail right next to residential. So we have a natural buffer vertically and horizontally to work with here. I think it's a very simple way to ensure compatibility. The other thing is the traffic being isolated to the freeway and not integrated to the neighborhood. It just makes it a very simple set of circumstances to deal with when a development was to come forward.
Okay, and how would you answer the proposed project mitigates environmental degradation, including slope failure, erosion, sedimentation, and stormwater runoff?
There would be no slope failure. Which one are you looking at?
A, special use hillside permit for hillside.
Environmental degradation, I think the single biggest environmental issue we could have is the riparian zone, 0.19 acres. That is established at that high mitigation ratio I talked about. You look at the bottom of it, the drainage way, by any measure of science, anybody's opinion, there's a very small riparian zone. That is the area that was deed restricted below the property at more than a 10-to-1 ratio. I'm saying that to be conservative, 10 times more than what you've removed. So there's the single biggest environmental issue. No environmental degradation. Slope failure, of course, because of the way we're treating this, slope failure is not even in the equation. Erosion, same thing. You actually have more erosion in a situation now because of runoff on a 2-to-1 slope that wouldn't be there. Sedimentation, we touched on that earlier. Matt has the expertise on that. And stormwater runoff, that's just very technical about quantifying what you'd have in additional stormwater and managing that with some engineering.
And lastly, because I know other commissioners have questions, on the variance, are you using the topography of the lot for that finding? It says the property is characterized by an extraordinary or exceptional situation or condition, such as exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape, or it has an exceptional topographical condition at the time of enactment or regulation.
You know, I think there's several exceptional situations. I think the one, if you just look at one, I think staff has alluded to it'd be appropriate, and I'd like you to hear this from them, to get a crossing over the drainage way. So we have an engineered plan that shows If you cross it and you keep a little glory hole separation between the outfall at NDOT, well, let me show you that. It's tough to describe, but it's really important. Yeah, this is probably a better exhibit. So if we were trying to keep this open, you see there's the dark area is fill on both sides of the road that would be crossing if you were trying to keep some of the drainage way open. And you'd have access to this manhole down by NDOT. You'd have these two completely chopped up, irregular shaped development sites, and you'd have 300 feet remaining of undisturbed drainage way. This is 700 feet of disturbance and 350 feet, let's say, of undisturbed drainage way. I don't see how anybody in public gains with that scenario. I think we can make it look better, and I think there's a departure in our opinions here. I'm confident that we can make it look better in doing what we're doing, which from staff's perspective, a little more aggressive. I think you deal with the issues better. Make it look more refined. So that giving access and then what it creates to fill the drainage way creates an exceptional situation. Thus, the finding can be made.
And I have a question for, I forget your name, I apologize, but our expert here, or expert.
I believe it's Matt.
Matt. So I apologize, I didn't write it down. I would like to know the scientific definition of a major drainage way as opposed to a minor drainage way. We keep hearing the term major, and I would like to know scientifically what the difference is. I think in my mind I can look at one and say that's a major drainage way, but I would like to know what the definition truly is.
Matt Setti with JBR. Not to punt, but I don't believe there is a scientific definition for a major drainage way. This is a policy issue. I mean, we have value in all of these. If I was to define it, I would say something that would probably conflict with both parties here. I would think that most of our drainage ways are natural above the lines of development around town. But as far as geomorphic function, wildlife function, habitat, water quality, most of these drainages that have been impacted at all are not functioning in a truly natural, pristine setting. So I think the dissemination of a major or minor drainage ways is one of city ordinance and policy. It's not one of scientific proof.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Kaufman.
This is for Vern or Claudia. On this map, the presentation showed from, which should be farther at the top, the drainage way coming down from Northgate Golf Course, correct? Well, this map, no, the map you have right here. But it'd be farther at the top, comes down under the freeway, right?
Correct.
And once it gets under the freeway, it goes, as I'm looking at the map on the picture, it goes to the right and then goes south. Is that correct? Goes east? Goes east?
Well, essentially, it's coming straight south. There's a little bend out as it comes out of from underneath the freeway, and then it runs.
Where's that culvert on that map right there?
Culvert's right there. That's about where the pipe outlets from underneath the freeway.
Okay, and then where does the water go?
There, and then it comes, have to look at it, comes down this, into there.
Okay, and then right next to that development.
Yes, it comes in here and then it goes under the road that they built into
Can you
the
zoom
development.
out, please, Robert?
Pardon?
Robert, can you zoom out a little bit so we can get a little more of that? There you go. Go ahead.
It goes under the flume, goes into this wetland area that was created with Turkey River Highlands, and it goes under the access road, which is off the map. And then it more or less gets highly restricted once it goes past 4th Street, as shown on the photos that Ms. Hanson showed. But from the north end all the way down to about 4th Street, it's, except for roadway crossings, is basically an open drainage way.
Is there any measurement of the amount of water that goes through there? I mean,
I don't know what it is offhand, but I know they have that information.
On the John Crumpata, KLS. It's you mean the coming at the 100-year flow?
No, well, I was asking on an average year, you know, I mean, we've obviously haven't had average years in the last
Yeah.
10 years, but in an average year, you know, what's the flow of the water through there?
What's the what?
How much water flows through there? Is there any?
You know, you
Is
got.
that I mean, maybe nobody has that answer.
I think if I can jump in, Claudia Hanson, Planning Manager, the slides that I showed earlier were last spring to give you an idea of what's, I mean, I can't give you the specific amount, but that's a good idea. And that was a fairly dry year. So
Yeah.
it was a little,
That was a
it was
good-
a little low, but that's fairly
What-
average for spring.
When was that?
That was in May.
So were you seeing runoff then?
I'm sorry?
Were you seeing runoff then? You were still
yeah.
seeing runoff,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, in May.
You can see there was some water there. You know, man, we have a hydrology report, right, that looks at the 5-year and the 100-year. And where it gets a little bit gray to me is Army Corps, who uses a term called the ordinary high water mark, and they look at water coming, you know, where you see erosion and you see a line. And I've asked them what is that in terms of a 5 or a 10-year or 20-year, and I think it's like a 10-year event for a storm. But you're looking at day to day how much water is. There's much less than that, obviously, like Claudia's exhibits showed.
Okay, thank you.
Did I answer your question, sir?
To help clarify, I think the last two questions we had, what is a major drainage way, and then how much is flowing through it, and to combine those, the photos, I would say, show you graphically what the drainage, the amount of drainage looks like in that area. And you're asking for a definition of a major drainage way. By policy, by code adopted by City Council and regional plan, I believe, a major drainage way is what drains 100 acres. So it doesn't depend on the flow, it depends on the area.
Well, I got a
Depends on the
question on
area.
that, if I may, Commissioner, Chair.
Are you done, Doug? Okay, Commissioner Newberg.
Well, I think what we're getting at is, you know, a river's gauged hydraulically by cubic feet per minute.
Per second, right.
And so, you know, if you're looking at the stream in the spring, you know, I think that would be like how many gallons in an hour or whatever.
Correct, but the definition as adopted by, excuse me for interrupting, go ahead if you want to finish that thought.
Well, I think that we're just trying to get the ebb and flows of the stream.
Okay. And I was just trying to kind of
No, yeah, I got your
connect the
point.
two. City Council has adopted it that you would look at the entire area of a drainage way that drains 100 acres or more. So that's the area that they want to protect as adopted by council.
Okay.
That you'd be looking at that area.
Vern, go ahead.
Vern Close, Senior Planner. I had on the question about what is a major drainage way. Yes, in the ordinance, it's a drainage way that drains 100 acres or more. And also in the major drainage ways plan, which is the master plan element of the drainage ways, it also discusses that it has biological and physical characteristics associated with the conveyance of water, connects neighborhood schools or open spaces such as parks or public land, and for a majority of this, you know, to a greater or lesser extent, this does that. Provides a continuous system which may provide bicycle, pedestrian, or wildlife corridor opportunities, and it provides important open space between similar or different development types. So in the areas where it hasn't been crossed by a road, it essentially is functioning in most of those capacities. So that, when the major drainage way ordinance, and well, it was actually a plan in '92 when it was put in place, and it was put specifically into ordinance, I believe, in around 2003. Some of these specific aspects were not put into the ordinance, but they are in the major drainage ways plan. And if you look at the conservation plan, there's also statements related to what a major drainage way should do and how it should be developed and those sorts of things. So that's our definition. And again, Mr. Setti has, there's probably a whole lot of different variations that come up, but that's what we have to work with. That's what our ordinance and our master plan is based on. So I just want to clarify that.
Any other questions? Vern, while you're still at the podium, I have a question for you. You discussed bridging in this application in your report. What do you refer to as bridging over this drainage way?
Again, it's an option that generally is not used with major drainage ways because of the cost, but it is a way to maintain the integrity of the drainage way with little or no disturbance to it. Again, it's up for someone to design it, but it is a possibility, and basically,
I guess I'm trying.
It's
the
a
simple
conspan
answer
bridge or a free
is
arch
basically a
bridge.
free-formed bridge, like a roadway bridge, is what you're talking about.
Right, or a conspan bridge. Evans Creek has a conspan bridge on it up off of Ridgeview. Something like that. Basically, they went down to the narrowest point, went across, and went back up, and there's minimal disturbance. Of course, that's a drainage way that has water in it pretty much year-round, but those are possibilities, and those are things that have historically happened with roadway crossings. Is basically they're done with fill, and then they.
If a person were to bridge it, and maybe not the entire proposed area that for the building space, but a portion of it, would it disturb the riparian growth that's taking place with plants along this drainage way? I mean, to me, I think about it, and I'm thinking, how's sunlight going to get in there? How's the vegetation going to grow?
A bridge isn't going to take up that much room. The width of a bridge is, 40, 50 feet wide, and it's up in the air, so there's light and air, and the sun moves around. I would assume that it wouldn't, bridges go across rivers and creeks and various other places, and stuff's growing under the bridges all over. So I don't know that would necessarily have an impact in this area here. Again, it's for someone to design, but we're just bringing out it's a possibility that would allow them to develop the property consistent with the ordinance instead of just, again, the filling of a portion of the drainage way is, not the best solution. It is an option, and I was sort of wondering about the display that Mr. Krompatik showed about, the edge treatments on both sides of that bridge that he showed, because what they're proposing to do is fill all the way up, right up to the edge of the freeway right-of-way and across onto it. So they could do the same thing that would hug closer to the, theoretically, and again, that's for them to say they can or can't do it, or that it can be designed. But I was kind of taken aback with that one, because what they're proposing to do by filling all the way to here goes right up to the edge of the freeway, and if they put just a crossing there, they couldn't do it that way. So it seemed to me it would just come straight across from the freeway and then go down from there instead of coming out 400 or 500 feet. But they've looked at it. I haven't.
Right. I understand. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
John? You showed some photos earlier and discussed where upstream, if you will, from starting at the golf course and coming through the McQueen area homes and Northwest homes. there's areas where there's crossings.
Right.
Do you have any idea how many feet of piping is in there, and are there any dams for water retention areas that were built, or is everything piped and allowed to flow freely
I don't
or
know that.
undisturbed?
I don't know that because when our engineer did the analysis of the hydrology report, he has a known quantity on the other side of the freeway, right? And he looked at whatever we would be changing, adding to that, if any. But what you don't know is how big those pipes are, how much capacity there is, because it's done. So you
Okay.
don't know, like for 100 year, if it's damming up at one of those crossings,
Okay.
right? Prior project approvals, I guess it'd be more of like a city public works being aware of something like that.
Okay. In staff's report, they're talking about having a 72-inch pipe that you are proposing to lay in this drainage, the bottom of this drainage area,
Yeah.
and fill over the top of it. There's discussion in here of, and tonight we've heard 400-plus feet of pipe going under I-80 that there's debris piled up in it. How would the pipe going under this proposed property be cleaned and maintained? I mean, what's the access?
Manhole is the way our engineer has it designed.
80 feet down? 80 feet of manhole to get to the bottom of the pipe?
Yeah, it's engineering. Yeah.
Okay.
The alternative would be an open grate kind of a thing, which I showed in one of the other exhibits, but right here, if you went a grate at the, where you get down, I'm calling it the glory hole because you see how it kind of cylinders down with an access road here. If you had you wanted to access the grate at the crossing at NDOT and then put a new one in the ground, you create a big hole there. And that would be another way to gain access. But we have a civil engineer that's also a structural engineer. He's competent in doing this. He has no concern with the manhole and the integrity of the design that he has put forth.
Is there any way of designing that pipe to allow water to go, to drain through the bottom of it, to allow water filtration back into the water table, as if it were naturally running through that drainage way?
Not sure I understand the question.
Well, you're talking about piping the water to a specific location, daylighting the pipe, and then putting it into a retention basin. And I apologize if I'm not using the right word.
Yeah, no worries.
But that's basically what you're doing. Yet we saw staff provided us with a diagram of natural versus piped, and it shows water filtering down through the soil and going into the water table rather than being piped out to a specific destination. Is that not a consideration when you're running storm drain pipe?
Yeah, there is a consideration. There's a couple of things going on here. One is infiltration, I think, is what you're touching on. We had a separate hydrologist give his opinion about infiltration and saying there is no infiltration because of the velocity you have. If you just left it the way it is, the water coming under the freeway, because you have a lot of grade and velocity in a major event, there's negligible infiltration. That's in his letter, and I hope it's in the staff report. If you actually design the site as we have, because you take away the runoff from steep slopes and make it flat, you actually you're implementing now LID, low impact development type of principles on that pad, which is what our civil engineer did in the grading plan. So you create more infiltration in the proposed condition than you do with the existing. On the outfall location, which is where it comes out at the end of the project area, he has a dissipation structure. The dissipation structure is energy related to water, velocity of water. That slows the water back down to the speed it was, less than what it is today, and And then you have rock anchoring to deal with erosion. So that's all of the engineering that goes into this on the hydrology side.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Vern? Maybe you want to pass this question off, but my question is, you just heard John's description of how the water would move and be entered back into the ground. Do you agree with that or disagree with that, or does staff have a comment on that?
I could probably comment, but I'll let one of these guys do it.
Thank you.
Sure. Just to address that specific comment.
For the record, please.
Joe Coudrier, City of Reno Public Works. So what John said is true with respect to the on-site. So whatever's falling on the site currently would potentially have a greater opportunity to infiltrate. But what he didn't mention is that most of the flows that are in that drainage way are not generated from on the site, they're generated from off-site. So those flows that would then, in the future, if there were a pipe come down through that drainage way, would not have that chance to infiltrate. So kind of a two-part question.
So what
Maybe I
you're
could say that
saying is
again.
their design doesn't take into account what comes down from upstream of the property?
No, it doesn't, but it would be probably infiltrating more flows that are generated on site. The point being, though, that most of the flows that are in that drainage way really don't come from that site anyhow. They come from off-site.
Okay. So just so I understand, their design doesn't take into account the water coming from the other side of the freeway, where a majority of the water is generated from. It only takes into account what is coming off of their property.
With respect to the question of infiltration, but just with respect to that. And that's what you're asking about, I believe?
Yes,
Okay.
just for infiltration.
That's true.
Okay, thank you. Vern? The slope that would be generated by this fill, there's discussion of coverage. Did the applicant, were they specific about what they would plant, how they would plant, trees, no trees, rose bushes? Can you detail that at all, please?
In the condition section and also in the discussion in the, I believe, the drainage way section of the ordinance, we talked about the slope that would be created at the end, at the south end of the drainage way, which would be in this area here, right in here. Basically, they had proposed to put some trees and more formal landscaping down in this area here, and then use a talus slope treatment on that big slope. And in looking at the site, we felt that if it was approved and the slope was put in, it would probably be better to use the embedded rock type pattern that's on the site than put a different type of treatment on there that would just call out that I've got a 2-to-1 slope here that I created. So the idea was to try to blend it in with the existing on-site rock pattern, and then also use the same type of vegetation that's adjacent to on the existing slopes here that aren't disturbed, so that when it reestablishes, it would just blend in with the existing slope. So, and that's pretty standard procedure. It's in code, and it's also a condition that we've been using for a long time to basically they create the slope, and then they have to come in. They get a revegetation plan approved, but they create the slope, and before they apply that, we go out on the site and look at it to make sure it's contour graded properly, and then apply the revegetation to it, which is bonded, and they have to ensure that it reestablishes. But the idea is to get it to look like it belongs there, and it's not, you can go, oh, there's a nice engineered 2-to-1
Did the applicant
slope.
provide a blend or anything for this coverage? I mean, is it something that you're aware of? Are you satisfied with it, or is this too early in the?
That's not generally, I think they're agreeable to do that, and that's, what we look at the back end when this, when we get to the details of what goes on there, because they could provide us with a plan and it could change based on, what's on the site or, another recommendation or another look at it. So But the idea is to get it to blend in with the native vegetation on the site so that in several years, you can hardly tell or not tell at all that there's actually been a big created slope put in that area.
Okay. The last question I have for you, under the special use permit for disturbance of a major drainage way, item E is impacts of the design on any wildlife and water quality values. Whether this was infilled or not, if this drainage way was built out using current standards and ordinances, would there be an impact to wildlife or water quality?
So, are you asking that if it's left in its current
And
state
built on.
and built
To-
on?
And built on. Would there be an impact to wildlife or water quality?
I'm not quite getting your.
Well, I
Good
mean,
question.
if somebody goes in there, the applicant, let's say, decides he's not going to fill this in, but he builds on both sides of this drainage way and comes down.
Oh,
you-
on either side of it?
On either side of it,
Mhm.
okay? Now, he's not impacting the bottom, the drainage way itself, but would there be an impact to wildlife and water quality if he builds in there?
If he builds in accordance with the drainage way, he would be, he would be 15 feet off the grade break on either the west and east side. And there would be essentially no disturbance to those slopes or to the bottom of the channel. So if any animals or other habitat that's down there would not be affected, because if they built on the slopes above, they would have to retain any water on site that's in addition, they have to retain, I'm not getting this correct, but they can't increase the drainage off their site from existing. So if they developed a pad up here, they would have to retain any excess water on the site, so that would infiltrate, and the drainage way would essentially function the way it is now, the way I would see it.
Okay. And when you say 15 feet from
The grade break.
from grade break, that's at the bottom or at the top?
The way a major drainage way is defined is if you have an area of low relief, which is less than 4 to 1, you go 15 feet off the 100-year floodplain. If you have no slopes exceeding 4 to 1 or greater, you can develop theoretically up to that line. In this instance, the 100-year flood hits slopes steeper than 4 to 1, between 2 and 3 to 1. So basically, you go all the way up to the top of the slope to hit a grade break, essentially a flat spot that's less than 4 to 1. And again, that's a on-site field exercise in some instances, but this one was fairly easy to see, basically on either side. So all those red areas on the, let me if I can pull that one up. To graphically show this, these are the steep slopes, and then 15 feet essentially, off of this edge and off of this edge, that's what the drainage way consists of. So that's the area that's covered by the ordinance.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Haltom, did you have a question?
I have a couple questions of staff. Potentially Claudia, but sit tight until you feel it's appropriate. The community to the south, when was that built approximately? Give or take 5 years, I'm not sure.
6, 7 years ago. These guys can tell you exactly, but
Not Bella Rio, but the underneath, where it terminates now, where the waterway terminates and goes underneath. You were showing us a photograph with the blue paint on the drainage way.
The trailer,
Yeah, on the other side
the
of
park
4th
on the other
Street, to the
side,
south of
15
4th.
years, maybe?
early 90s.
Early 90s. Okay,
Early
and was
90s,
that
92, 93.
and was that a city
somewhere in
development or a county development at that time?
That was city.
Okay. And if that project were to be brought forth today, was the hillside ordinance in place at that time? And the drainage way?
I don't know if that would have triggered hillside, but it would have triggered drainage ways, but I'm not sure if drainage ways were in place when that was reviewed, or if it was, I don't believe it was reviewed using drainage ways. It's not knowing exactly when it was done it's hard to say if drainage ways were in place, but it was right around the time when drainage ways.
Is it safe to say if that project came forward today, had never been developed and came forward today, that you'd have
It'd probably look a lot
concerns,
different.
or it would look differently given the ordinances?
Yes.
Okay. What about the to the north of this property where Highway 80 has crossed this drainage way and it's been filled? Approximately when was that filled?
60s.
Okay.
I believe that's when I-80 was put in.
Is the original
around
railroad
the
alignment,
60s.
transcontinental railroad alignment, consistent with Highway 80 there too? Is it possible that, was that lower down? Okay, all right. And
That's
again,
down by the river.
And if that was brought forward today, that likely that engineering solution would be different from what's in place, given the codes and would we end
Well,
up with
also
a
it depends
6-foot
on
pipe
if
there?
the state preempt our regulations, because sometimes that state projects.
But our regulations would
But
indicate.
our
different-
regulations would say that you're supposed to look at this stuff, and hopefully they would have considered that when they did that. I mean,
Got it.
if they were doing it now.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions of staff or the applicant? John, I have one last question for you. It may be for Matt, I'm not sure.
Yes.
You heard me ask the question of staff, specifically Joe, of the water for infiltration that you are, that this system was designed for. If you pipe it, it's essentially, we were told that it's calculated for the water on your property only. It's not calculated for the water upstream. Is that true?
That's right. You're dealing
Okay.
with the on-site part for whatever stormwater you generate, and then you just convey what's off-site through the property.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You bet.
No further questions. I will bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Romeo, you can go first, please.
Okay, I'll get the ball going. I respect the work of both sides on this issue, and this is something that I think is technical, but also requires a little bit of common sense. Any of us that have been in the area for any length of time, say over 25 to 30 years, we're well aware of what's happened north of Interstate 80 and regarding that area of the supposed natural drainage way. It's been built on, there's a rock wall, or a riprap or a rock wall extending into what was once a drainage way, which is visible right now from Interstate 80 looking to the north. Anyone that's involved in water in any way, shape, or form can tell you that that drainage way has been disturbed and disturbed and disturbed many, many times. It's no longer natural, and it's no longer a major. That I did some rough calculating. That 72-inch pipe that's going to be ran through the property should handle approximately 17.1 million gallons of water a day. It's a substantial amount. And I will disagree with anyone here that says water running across the bottom of a wide, undeveloped area will be purer than water that is diverted through a pipe system. You have only to look at the bottom of the Chalk Bluff Canyon during any rainstorm to tell you that that's chocolate milk coming in, not pure water. The Highland Ditch has been converted to enclosed pipe for exactly that reason. It keeps the water from being polluted when it's flowing. So I believe it is better to run it through there, since I don't believe it's a major or a natural drainage way anyway. The properties to the north have encroached in what was once a drainage way. The properties to the south have done it. The habitat there has been disturbed, and disturbed again. There's nothing natural about it. Most deer are living currently at the water treatment plant property because it's safe there. They go to the Chalk Bluff Canyon and go up around Leroy, and then they come back to the water plant. We've watched them grow up there for the last 15 years. And I did some calculating, and it kind of comes up with what the Corps of Engineers does. If you look at the actual waterway at the bottom, you're looking at 1,000 feet, and I took 50 feet from the center line off to both sides. I came up with just under 3 acres of actual what I would consider the normal drainage way on there. And it looks like the Corps of Engineers came up with 2.5. So to make a long story short, I think this will be better for that area. I think it'll finally put a close to a long history. We need to get that area developed as part of the gateway to this town. We're not talking about gasoline, diesel, motor oil, or anything being stored at that site that could possibly contaminate the waterway. I think I like what may be going there. I will support this, and I will respectfully disagree with staff, but I think I can make the findings, and I will be voting that way.
Commissioner Kaufman.
I pretty much agree. I sit and look at these pictures of the wildlife, and I do hunt. In these pictures, I don't see any vegetation that they're eating. It might be a transition area, might be why ever they're there. I mean, you know, in my neighborhood, I've seen coyotes. You know, they get out of their environment sometimes, I guess, if you want to say that. But I've also worked in that area, and I agree. The habitat is down by the canal that goes across where they have it bridged. So I can make the findings, and I support the project also.
Thank you. Commissioner Haltom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, I have to respectfully disagree with my other commissioners. I see this project quite differently, and I have to commend the staff, and I think I can support their report entirely. I live on a drainage way. I mean, it's like we've all forgotten here that we live in the high desert, and this is water, and the environments are very fragile. The watershed, you know, the drainage way behind my house, it's not Thomas Creek, it's not White's Creek, I admit, but there are, like described, little treasures. I found pea vine growing in mine. I know exactly where the few aspens are. I know where the batch of dogwoods are, and it's in a micro scale. It's here and there. I think this is an unfortunate circumstance where we've got a number of creeping entitlements. The property's been denuded by fire recently. I think that's tainting our opinion that it looks more like a ditch than it does a drainage way. You know, just because the neighbor to the north filled it in and the neighbor to the south filled it in and the neighbor next door has GC, I want GC and I want to fill it in, I don't think are good grounds for us to bend over and provide exception to the rules that we've defined with respect to the hillside ordinance and to the drainage ways. And I just think this is a very dangerous precedent. And if we keep going forward and saying just because somebody else did it one time, or many, many, many years ago before we had the forethought to put these things in place, I think it's just a very, very bad idea. And this is just a perfect example of where something is being engineered and approved bit by bit by bit without a perspective on what the final picture will be. You know, that this project has creeped along as far as it has, and I think it needs to end here. I cannot make the findings. I've got several identified that I'm unable to make, and I will have to continue to oppose this project. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Egan, Commissioner Newberg? Commissioner Egan.
Commissioner Egan, I've got to agree with Commissioner Altum on this, just based on the, I mean, you made some good points in there, but I feel most importantly is that these ordinances were put into place for a reason, and my ability to make the finding just isn't there on, multiple points. So for that reason, I'm opposed at this point.
Thank you. Commissioner Newberg.
Well, I think both sides have got some great points on it. And of course, I respect Vern's opinion on this. And the cities, they worked very hard on it. And so did the applicant. I have to side with Dennis on this. This property's, it's not what it was 100 years ago. And it's not gonna be what it was 100 years ago. So I cannot agree with the proposed motion of non-compliance. I can find it in compliance.
Thank you, Commissioner Newberg.
Can I address?
Sure, go ahead,
Commissioner
Commissioner
Egan?
Kaufman.
And only because you're a newer commissioner, but that's why they came before us for a SUP, is because it's a special situation. I mean, and I think that's one of the things, that we look at when a project's brought before us. So if it fell right in place, they wouldn't be before us, and we wouldn't be making that decision one way or the other. So.
I can understand where you're coming from on that. However, I do feel that the power being in our hands at this point, I still have trouble making the finding based on more than, I mean, there's plenty of points that, there's a couple that I don't agree with, but there are absolutely a few here that I do agree with on the findings to oppose.
Okay. I've gone through and I've been able to make 95% of all these findings. But I'm short 5% and I have to make them all. And the ones I'm having the hardest time with are the ones that didn't get answered tonight. I guess they did get answered tonight, because I asked staff about the impacts of wildlife, and that's a major one to me, and the potential of vegetation growth by different means. And I just see, no matter where you go in town, habitat is disturbed, water qualities are disturbed anytime there's any development around. And it doesn't matter whether it's residential development, it's commercial development. Where you start to, you draw the lines for construction, or limits of construction. If the top of a hill was taken down 10 feet, then it moves it into this drainage area even more. That's a real issue with me for major wildlife. I don't think that this development would impact small wildlife, aviary, to the point where they would not be in that area any longer. I mean, we see it all over where there's been development. South Meadows is a great area to look into. A lot of houses down there. There's still quite a bit of wildlife, aviary in that area. And with the right drainage system, I believe you actually have better water quality going into our Truckee River. But it bothers me that we're only providing water quality for the area of this property, not what's coming downstream, what's part of, at times of the year, running through this area. And Dennis, I would like, to hear a little more from you regarding that. 'Cause
Well, I think you missed something there. That you're carrying the water all the way through your property. It's coming from where it ties under I-80 through a 72-inch, if I'm right, driving all the way through. So instead of that water scouring and picking up sediment all the way through that drainage way, which it always does in heavy rains, and dumping it down into the Truckee River, it's going to stay relatively pristine, at least through this section. There will not be a contribution in this area to higher turbidity or to a higher sediment count. In my opinion, that's a better way to do it, my opinion. And I think scientifically, if you were to go to look at water experts, they will tell you the same thing. That's why open reservoirs, that's why open ditches, why open canals are no longer acceptable. What we have in our system right now is there because it's grandfathered, but it is being replaced because it's hard to maintain and it doesn't meet some of the requirements now. You couldn't build it the way it is today.
Okay.
And I think that's where you're missing it. The drainage on the site's insignificant. It's the drainage coming all the way down and accumulating down from the north that'll be carried underneath the site through the 72-inch pipe. I think, if I'm reading this right. So,
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Haltom?
One more thing I want to go back and mention here, and I want to be a bit more blunt about it. One of the key findings we have to make for a variance is B, the strict application of the regulation would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to or exceptional and undue hardships upon the owner of the property. Clearly here, the property owners are asking for the home run. They want the gold mint solution that's going to provide the highest economic value to them, and that's going to be to fill this whole thing and make one giant GC property. I think that staff, and we've had several other people here who have been involved in the previous discussions, have discussed several other alternatives that would allow them to develop this consistent with our other codes and regulations and provide other useful and economically, providing solutions for them. They're just asking for the world in this one, and I don't see that there's any real hardship or need to allow this variance to occur. I think that we haven't explored the other solutions and that there are other ways to develop this property, and that there is really no hardship to justify this variance.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments, questions, discussion?
I just have one additional question. Regarding, related to the major drainage way finding E, finding the bicycle and pedestrian path. Was that, in looking at the map that's currently up there, was that, that bicycle path was not on the property itself, correct? That was on an adjacent property?
No, it was on the property.
Well, the
Claudia
new
Hanson,
path, the
Planning Manager.
proposed
No,
trail.
that's on the, I believe it's the Homeowners Association of the Truckee River Highlands. That development below it, that lower portion that Vern's pointing out right now is on their Homeowners Association property.
Okay.
So
And
it's
that
not,
was-
it's not under the property, under the applicant's ownership.
Just so I understand, though, that was agreeable to the other, to those property owners, that the proposed
We don't
trail
have an
would-
affidavit to that, no.
We do, however, have a letter here from the Truckee River Highlands Bella Rio organization saying that they oppose this, correct? Is that not the same organization?
I'm not sure if it's, okay, it's the same association.
Is that the same association?
According to Vern, yes, it is.
So this is a letter from that association in opposite, not specifically to that.
Truckee River Highlands, and that's the common area for that. That's part of the common area.
Can you say that in the microphone, please?
For clarification, Vern, would you
I'm
speak into
sorry.
the microphone? Thank you.
This is the Bella Rio Truckee River Highlands project, and this is part of their common area. And then there's a Tumwa parcel right in this area here.
Excuse me. One person at a time, please. Thank you.
So I guess the answer to that is if this got approved, they would have to get approval and an easement to build that trail across that piece of property. And that's in one of the recommended conditions, should the project be approved, that they would have to obtain all the necessary easements and construct that path when they do the grading to construct what is being proposed.
Okay, then I have a question for you, Vern. Is any of that proposed trail on this on the piece of property that is not on Flying J property?
I believe that this portion right here is running right down the east, close to the east property line of the TCA property. But there would be, basically the trail would go, it goes down the drainage way or on the east side of the drainage way on the other side of the freeway, then it comes up along I-80 by the Charlins project and hits Robb Drive. Then it would come across Robb Drive, and then it could be continued somehow here to get to.
So that portion, the line then between Flying J and TCA property is actually on the TCA properties?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. The dashed line below is what will require an easement at a later date?
From this point to the south, yes.
Boris just told me.
John, would you?
Please. Boris, who's one of the owners, he owned that property, did that subdivision, created the homeowners association, carved out the open space, and secured an easement for access on that dash line part. That's what he just told me.
Okay, so there is an easement for the dash
An
line?
easement, utility,
proposed trail?
pedestrian access, that's what he just told me.
Okay.
But
Vern, do we
again,
have-
that would just have to be demonstrated before they can construct this.
Okay. Commissioner Egan, does that answer your question?
It does. Sorry to bring that up so late, but
Commissioner
I
Haltom, were you
didn't think
okay
that
with
was
that?
answered earlier.
Okay. Thank you. No, get the questions answered. That's good. Thank you, gentlemen. And Claudia. Okay. With that, we've had discussion. Is there any further discussion? At this time, I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Newberg. Commissioner Romeo. You're going to start with the split them, please, Commissioner Romeo? Okay, thank you.
And if you could lift up your microphone a little bit so we can hear you, please.
In the case of LDC 11-00032, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit, subject to conditions, and I can make the findings.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. Do I have any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Commissioner Haltom?
Commissioner Egan?
Okay, 4 yeas, 2 nays. The nay votes, would you please tell us which items you cannot make finding for? Commissioner Haltom?
I cannot make findings A, B, or F with respect to the special use permit.
Thank you. Commissioner Egan?
I cannot make findings A and B.
Thank you.
I'm just curious about the procedure. Wouldn't that only have to be specified if we voted in the majority to deny? To have that?
It was a little unusual, but it's not illegal.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Thank you. My misunderstanding then, Marilyn. I thought anytime we had nay votes, they were supposed to describe. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the case of LDC 11-00032, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the variance. I can make all the findings, subject to conditions.
I would like to second that, and I can make the findings as well.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Romeo, a second from Commissioner Newberg. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Commissioner Alton.
Commissioner Egan.
Okay, we have 4 yeas, 2 nays. Thank you very much. This item has, Marilyn?
Please read the appeal.
I will. I'm getting there. Any action taken by the Planning Commission on a tentative map, special use permit, variance, or skyway is final unless appealed. Any person aggrieved by the decision may file an appeal. Each person, entity, must make its own appeal. Appeals must be filed with city clerk within 10 days of the Planning Commission hearing by submitting the appropriate form and fee. All other matters will be forwarded to the City Council with the Planning Commission recommendation. Thank you. Marilyn, I refer that question to you. The question was, what is an aggrieved party?
It is defined on the bottom of the application for appeal, for the appeal.
Thank you. Okay. With that, we move on to item number 5, LDC 11-00034, Dottie's number 69 at Shopper Square. Will the applicant please come forward? Commissioner Woosley, welcome back.
Chairman, Commissioners, for the record, my name is Steve Hickson. I'm the General Manager of Northern Nevada for Dottie's. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Staff?
Claudia Hanson, Planning Manager. Staff supports the request, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you. With that, I will open up public comment. Robert, do I have any public comment cards, request to speak cards?
No, sir, I do not, but could I get the applicant to give me his business card or something, because I didn't catch his name, please?
Sorry, did you hear that applicant? Would you please come up to the microphone?
Hey, Robert, you got to speak up.
We've been asked that you fill out a request to speak form or at least give your business information to Robert, please, for the record.
I just couldn't hear your name, I'm sorry.
Okay, sure, I'll fill one out. Right now, or do you want to?
When you're done.
Okay.
When we're done, thank you. Okay. Do we have any requests to speak forms? No. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here in the audience who wishes to speak this evening? I see one gentleman making his way up. Will you please fill out a card with Robert before you leave?
Absolutely.
Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Alan Gottlieb. I'm with Real Estate Affiliates. We're the shopping center owner, and we're here to support the applicant.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing and seeing none, I will close public comment. Bring it back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Newberg.
Motion, Chair Weisky.
Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, go ahead, Commissioner Newberg.
Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit subject to conditions. I can make the findings.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Egan. I have a motion from Commissioner Newberg, a second from Commissioner Egan. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. On to item number 6, TXT 11-00001, Dandini Regional Center Planning Area Overlay Amendment. Nathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. This is a text amendment to the Dandini Regional Center Overlay Plan. This is a follow-up to recent amendments to the Dandini Regional Center Master Plan portion, which identifies sort of special development characteristics for areas identified as MAP 2 in that plan, specifically for the Desert Research Park. This text amendment identifies specific development standards characteristic for the campus-like environment that are consistent with DRP's recently adopted facility plan. One amendment that we'd suggested to make, you have a memo passed out to you, just a minor modification to section 1808-405 FC3-2. It's identified on your memo there. Basically, it would add an exemption for sidewalks to the base MU standard. This is consistent with the facility plan and with our intention. The applicant pointed that out, and staff concurs with that and would request that any motion to adopt would include that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. At this time, I will open public comment. Robert, do we have any requests to speak forms?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay. Is there anybody here in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? Who did not fill out a request to speak form? Go ahead and please fill one out when you're done.
Melissa Lindell with Wood Rogers. We've been working closely with Nathan on these text amendments, and as I indicated to you before on the previous action, Dandini Research Parks will be before you with the special use permit following this action. And I do have with me today Peter Ross and Jeff Pickett with Dandini Research Parks. Thank you.
Thank you. And don't forget to fill out that form, please. Anybody else wishing to speak on this agenda item? Hearing and seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for questions, discussion, or motion. Commissioner Haltom.
In case of TXT 11-00001, Dandini Regional Center Planning Area Overlay Amendment. Based on compliance with the applicable considerations, I move to recommend that the City Council approve the text amendment by ordinance, including the memorandum making a change to section 18.08.405 FC3-2.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second? Commissioner Newberg?
Did that include Nathan's addition to the text?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Yes.
I second it.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Haltom, a second from Commissioner Newberg. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. With that, we will move on to Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. Commissioner Newberg?
I don't think we had. I think we did have one, but it was just basically conformance.
Conformance.
And that's it. Next one is going to be in March.
Very good. Thank you. Staff announcements?
None.
Reports on planning status division projects?
I think we covered that in the workshop earlier this evening. So
Okay.
there'll be, the ones that are pending will be coming up in the near future.
Okay. Announcements of upcoming trainings?
None.
Report on status response to staff directions?
Also covered earlier this evening.
Thank you. Report on actions taken by City Council on previous Planning Commission items?
I don't believe we haven't had any appeals
Okay.
that have come forward since the last meeting.
Commissioner's suggestion for future agenda items? None? Adjournment.